My name's Jake. I'm 28 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the one no one noticed in my own family. You know the type, forgotten when group texts go out, cropped out of the family photo, remembered only when someone needs a lift or a favor, never when it truly counts. I was raised by a mom who had a tongue like a razor and a memory that somehow filtered out anything good I ever did. She held onto every screw up like prized possessions, but all the times I helped her, the awards I earned, the birthday cards I saved up for, those vanished without a trace. I've got a sister named Emily. She figured out early on that acting like Miss Perfect opened every door. She grinned at the right moments, curtsied when expected, aced her classes, and they treated her like a princess. I, on the other hand, was quiet, too blunt for comfort, always the skeptic in the room. That kind of honesty didn't fit into the world I grew up in, where fake smiles were more valuable than the truth, and saying what you really felt was practically a crime. Still, I tried for years to belong. I brought pies to dinners I was never officially invited to, handed out presents at birthdays where no one even realized I was there, and handed out compliments to relatives who never once pronounced my name right. At first, I thought if I just kept showing up and doing my part, eventually they'd really see me. But by the time I hit 25, the illusion shattered. I finally got it. Nothing I did would ever earn me a permanent spot at the table. And yet, that kind of rejection doesn't just disappear. No matter how logically you come to terms with it, it leaves a dull ache that never fully leaves. So when Thanksgiving came around last year, I found myself stuck in that same debate, should I even bother going? There was one reason I considered it: my cousin, Lily. She's 2 years younger than me, but way more emotionally mature than most of the so-called grown-ups in our family. Over the years, we'd gotten close, texting back and forth, late night phone calls, real conversations that actually meant something. The night before Thanksgiving, she messaged me, "You better come, I saved you a seat." That one line, it got me. I thought maybe just for her, it was worth showing up. So I got in my car and made the 40-minute drive to my uncle's place. Same as always, neatly trimmed lawn, a ridiculous inflatable turkey on the front lawn, and that familiar smell of butter, cinnamon, and family dysfunction seeping out the windows. I parked where I usually do 3 houses down, since the driveway is always packed by the time I show up. I walked up the steps with a bottle of wine I already knew no one would touch, and as I looked through the screen door, there they were: Mom, Aunt Karen, Emily, Uncle Ron, all smiling, laughing like they were auditioning for a sitcom called Barely Holding It Together. I wasn't expecting hugs or cheers, but I also didn't see this coming. As I reached out to open the door, it creaked open just a few inches. And there was Uncle Ron, standing like a wall I didn't ask for. No smile, no, "Hey Jake," just that smug little twitch at the corner of his mouth. "You're not part of this family anymore," he said flatly. "Time for you to go." At first I chuckled honestly, thinking it was some messed up joke. But he didn't budge. Over his shoulder, I caught sight of my mom setting 2 plates on the table. One of them had a name card I instantly recognized: mine. She handed it off to Emily's boyfriend, some guy I'd met twice, and they toasted like nothing was out of the ordinary. My seat had already been given away before I even made it through the door. "I'm serious," Ron added. "You being here just stirs things up." I blinked, confused. "Stirs things up? I haven't even walked inside." He just shrugged, all fake sympathy. "Let's not turn this into a scene. Best you head home." I looked past him, straight at Mom. She didn't say a word, just raised one eyebrow, took a slow sip of wine, and watched like she was catching the latest drama on television. For a split second, I thought about pushing back, yelling, causing a stir. But I didn't. Instead, I did something even I didn't see coming. I nodded. No words, just a quiet nod. Then I turned around, walked back down those steps with the same bottle of unopened wine in my hand, got in my car, and drove 2 blocks before I pulled over. My hands were trembling, not with anger, but with something colder, something final. Because in that moment, I finally knew I wasn't family to them. I was a background character. A scapegoat when they needed someone to blame, an empty chair to fill when someone bailed. But here's the kicker: they had no idea I'd already been planning for this. Months ago, I started preparing for the day I'd stop chasing a place I never really had. Lily and I had talked about it more than once on hushed calls, sharing stories of being the outsiders, the forgotten ones. She saw it too. The double standards, the guilt trips, the games behind the smiles. She once told me, if we ever wanted to shatter the illusion, it'd only take one spark. So I opened my phone and pulled up a saved message. One I'd spent weeks writing and perfectly timing. It wasn't a rant or some angry goodbye. Just the truth, clear, calm, and cut to the bone. And I sent it to a very specific list of people in that house. 5 minutes later, I was still sitting there, parked at the corner of the street with the engine humming quietly. I glanced up at the rearview mirror, and that's when I saw the front door swing open. Lily came storming out first, face flushed with fury. Then came my cousin Josh. After him, his girlfriend. And right behind them was Aunt Karen's best friend, the one who always brought those homemade cheesecakes and had a soft spot for me, even when no one else did. They left one by one. I couldn't hear what was being yelled inside, but I didn't need to. I already knew. The mask was slipping, and things were starting to unravel, fast. Before I even shifted the car into drive, Lily's name lit up on my phone screen. My heart thumped not from fear, but because I honestly hadn't expected it all to explode this quickly. "Jake," she snapped the second I answered, not even giving me a chance to say anything. "What the hell did you just do?" I paused for a beat. "You saw it." Of course, I saw it. So did everyone else. Uncle Ron looked like he was going to pop a blood vessel. Your mom tried to play clueless. And Emily. She just stood there, totally spaced out, like she forgot where she was. I could hear wind rushing through her mic. She was walking fast, maybe pacing or maybe heading to her car. There was a moment of silence. Then her voice softened. "Why didn't you tell me you were recording them?" Here's the thing. After years of being brushed off, lied about, made to feel like I was imagining things, I started collecting proof. Not out of spite, out of exhaustion. I was done being gaslit. So I started saving texts, recording conversations, taking screenshots. I had a clip of Mom telling Emily to just take the credit for something I did. A voice memo of Uncle Ron saying I only showed up to family gatherings looking for handouts even though I'd never asked them for a dime. And maybe the most brutal one, a recording from my own birthday last year, where they somehow forgot I existed, despite me sitting quietly at the dinner table the entire time. That Thanksgiving message I sent, it wasn't just a note. It was a 5-minute highlight reel, complete with timestamps, context, and long, painful pauses between their backhanded remarks. I'd sent it to 7 people. Lily, Josh, Aunt Laura, my cousin's fiance, my mom's sister who always seemed torn about where she stood, and 2 family friends who had long bought into the version of events my mom and Uncle Ron sold like it was scripture. "I didn't tell you," I said gently, "because I didn't want to drag you into the mess." Lily let out a short laugh. "I'm already in it, Jake, but I'm glad you sent it." I exhaled, feeling the tension in my hands finally start to loosen around the steering wheel. "You okay?" "I will be. I'm done with them." Click. She hung up. I sat in the quiet of the car, staring blankly through the windshield as more vehicles began leaving the driveway. A few folks lingered on the porch, looking around, clearly confused. Then came the shrill voice of my mother, rising above the murmur. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but I didn't need to. I'd been hearing some version of it my whole life. Next came a call from Aunt Laura. "Jake," she said, almost breathless, "where are you?" I considered lying. "Just down the street. Stay there, I'm coming." She hung up, and sure enough, 5 minutes later, she opened the passenger door and slid into the seat next to me. Her eyes were wide, not with anger, but more like someone who just stumbled onto a train wreck. "I listened to all of it," she said. Then she repeated it. "All of it." I didn't say a word. "I didn't realize it was that bad," she whispered. "I mean, I knew they were mean sometimes, but I didn't realize how intentional it all was." I turned and looked at her. "You really didn't?" She winced. "I saw glimpses, but your mom always made it sound like you were the problem. Said you were dramatic, that you twisted things. I didn't think she'd lie." "She didn't lie," I murmured. "She just edited." Laura stared ahead at the dashboard. "This is going to tear the family apart," she said quietly. "Maybe," I replied. "Or maybe it was already broken." That night, when I got home, my phone exploded with messages. Some were angry, others were apologizing. A few were just confused. But the ones that stood out the most, the ones that cut the deepest, were the ones that never came. My mom, Emily, Uncle Ron, not a single text, no calls, not even a passive-aggressive emoji. Then the next morning rolled around, and that's when I saw her post. Mom, in her usual dramatic flair, had written out a long-winded Facebook status about betrayal and how private matters were being weaponized for attention. She never mentioned my name, but it didn't take a genius to figure out who she meant. The comments were full of sympathy and scolding. People wrote things like, "So sorry you're going through this," and "You raised him better than that." But then, something I didn't expect happened. Lily commented, then Josh, then Aunt Laura, and one by one, others joined in. They pushed back, called out the gaslighting, the favoritism, the fake narratives. Some even shared their own stories how they'd been mistreated or guilt-tripped too. The whole thread blew up. Some relatives deleted their comments. A few went so far as to block me, but it was clear the tide had finally turned. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing on my own. For once, other people actually saw the truth too. That weekend, I got a message request from Emily's boyfriend. He wrote, "I had no idea what I was stepping into. I'm sorry. If I had known the full picture, I never would have taken your seat at that table." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The message had already been delivered loud and clear, and not just the one in that group chat. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a background character in someone else's story. I felt like I was finally writing my own. And that story, it wasn't over yet. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, someone knocked on my door. I live in a calm little neighborhood. Nothing extravagant, just a small apartment above a bakery that smells like cinnamon rolls every morning. It's the kind of quiet I never had growing up, where every slammed door felt like a warning shot, and every holiday dinner was an act in a family drama nobody enjoyed. I wasn't expecting anyone. Most of my friends had already reached out after the video made the rounds. Some were supportive, some stunned. Lily had been checking in daily, but I wasn't ready for who actually showed up at my door. It was my dad. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. He looked older than I remembered, more gray in his beard, that worn leather jacket he always wore hanging looser on his frame. He didn't smile. He just stood there, hands shoved into his pockets, rocking on his heels like he was struggling to find the right words. "Hey," he said finally, barely above a whisper. "Didn't think I'd be seeing you," I replied, stepping aside just enough to let him in, but not exactly rolling out the welcome mat. He hesitated, then stepped into the apartment. His eyes scanned the place. It was quiet, tidy, filled with little things that made me feel grounded. My records lined up on the shelf, a stack of books I finally had time to read, a framed photo of Lily and me from that one Thanksgiving we ditched dinner and got burgers instead. "I saw the video," he said after a beat. "Well, parts of it. Your aunt forwarded it to me." I waited. He sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on knees, staring down like the rug was going to tell him what to say next. "Your mom's been losing it," he mumbled. "Says you ambushed her, that you twisted everything." I leaned against the kitchen counter. Did I? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pressed the bridge of his nose between his fingers, like the pressure might squeeze out the right response. "I don't know, Jake," he finally said. "I mean, I always knew things were tense between you and your mom, but hearing it all laid out like that hit hard." I crossed my arms. "Hard for who?" He looked up. "For me, because it made me realize I let it go on for too long." And there it was, the first time my father had ever spoken to me like he was holding up a mirror instead of trying to wave me off. I didn't trust myself to reply, not yet. He shifted, glancing around. "You remember when you were 13 and your mom tossed out that sketch portfolio?" I nodded slowly. That day had stayed with me like a scar that never quite faded. I spent months working on those drawings. She'd thrown them away because I'd gotten an AB in science. "Yeah," I said. "She told me I drew something offensive." "You did," he said, cracking a dry smile. "It was a cartoon of her yelling at you. That's all it was." He chuckled once bitterly. I believed her. Never even asked to see it. "That was always the script," I said, amazed at how steady my voice stayed. She'd say something, you'd go along with it, Emily would follow suit, and I'd be stuck trying to decide if I was losing my mind or just not worth the truth. He didn't argue, just nodded slightly and let the silence settle between us. "I can't undo what's happened," he said eventually, "but I wanted you to know. I see it now. I should have spoken up. I should have defended you, and I'm sorry I didn't." I believed him, I truly did. But I also knew regret didn't erase the silence that came before it. He hadn't been cruel, but he had watched in silence. And sometimes that's a different kind of damage. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "I really do, but I don't know what you're hoping to get from me." He sighed. "I don't know either. Maybe I just wanted to check in, see how you're holding up." "I'm doing better," I told him honestly, "now that I've stepped away from all of it, now that I've stopped pretending they're going to change." He nodded again. "They're already trying to spin it. Damage control." "Of course they are," I muttered. "They figure if they stay quiet long enough, people will forget, that it'll all blow over." I raised an eyebrow. "Will it?" He looked down. "Some already moved on. Others don't want to get involved. But a few, they're furious, especially after the part about the money." "Ah, that part." See, there was something I hadn't shared with anyone, at least not publicly, until I added it at the end of the message. For years, I'd quietly helped out family members with money, paid rent for cousins, covered car repairs, even lent Emily some cash once when she said she needed to leave an abusive relationship. I never asked for repayment. I never bragged about it. I did it hoping, maybe foolishly, that it might earn me a little space, a little acceptance. That stopped 3 months ago. No announcement, no drama. I just started redirecting my help toward Lily, toward real friends, toward people who actually cared. And at the end of the video, I included a simple line: "This is why I stopped funding your lives." Apparently, that stung more than anything I'd recorded. "They're saying you're being spiteful," my dad said, "that this was punishment." "They punished themselves," I said quietly. "All I did was stop rewarding it." He didn't challenge that. After a moment, he stood and dusted off his jacket. "I should get going," he said. "I just wanted you to know you were right. About all of it." He made his way to the door, paused with his hand on the knob, and glanced back at me. "If there's ever a path back for us," he said, "I hope you'll let me walk it." Then he stepped out and was gone. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just stood there in the stillness, waiting for the next storm to come, because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not with them, not with her. My mom didn't let go of control without a fight. Emily never dealt with public shame well. Thanksgiving might have lit the match, but Christmas was the real test. And if they thought pretending nothing had changed was going to work, they had another thing coming. December arrived like a cold breath, and the silence was louder than ever. The family group chat, the one that usually blew up with potluck lists and recycled memes from Aunt Margie, had gone dark. The last message in there was from Lily. "Let me know when you're ready to be honest with yourselves." No one replied. No angry emoji. No awkward jokes. Just quiet guilt sitting there like it could pass for peace. I wasn't invited to Christmas, of course, but that didn't matter. For the first time in years, I didn't feel excluded. I felt free. I didn't have to fake laugh through another dinner where Emily's job was treated like she cured cancer, while mine was conveniently forgotten. I didn't have to sit through my mom making backhanded jokes at my expense, or listen to Uncle Ron casually say, "Jake's always been a little too sensitive," like I was some defective product off an assembly line. I was done with all of it, free from their expectations, free from their version of who I was supposed to be. But I wasn't finished. The video I sent on Thanksgiving, it cracked the mask. It sparked whispers, forced uncomfortable conversations, but they hadn't really changed. They were just hiding now, waiting for things to settle. I could feel it, that smug belief that I'd eventually go quiet and they'd rewrite the narrative. So I made sure that couldn't happen. I started with the money. Quietly, carefully, and without warning, I pulled the strings they never thought I'd cut. That $3,000 I'd given Emily, I had my lawyer send her a letter. It said that what was once considered a gift was now void, given the false story she told about leaving her boyfriend for safety funny, considering he'd been laughing in my chair at Thanksgiving. I gave her 60 days, no threats, no fees, just a deadline. Then I canceled the automatic bank transfer that had been covering part of Uncle Ron's property taxes. He never outright asked for help, too much pride. But years ago, he hinted at trouble, and every November since, I'd sent the exact amount he needed. This year, on the 3rd of December, the payment bounced. His bank couldn't reach mine. And then there was my mom, the biggest one. For 5 years, I'd quietly paid the lease on her car. She treated it like her birthright, never thanked me once, said it was my responsibility as her son. What she didn't know was that the lease was still in my name. On the 10th of December, I repossessed it. That set off a firestorm. Emily called first angry, shrill, practically foaming. Then Uncle Ron tried the calm approach, like I was a tantrum-throwing kid he needed to reason with. And finally, Mom. She didn't cry, didn't yell. She just said flatly, "So, this is who you've become?" And I answered, "Number. This is who you made me become." Then I hung up. Christmas Eve rolled around, and I wasn't alone. I spent it at Lily's apartment with a few close friends. We cooked together, lit candles, played board games. We exchanged simple gifts, thoughtful ones, not meant to impress, just meant to say, "I see you." It was the coziest, most genuine holiday I'd had in as long as I could remember. Around midnight, Lily poured us each a glass of wine. She sat down beside me on the floor, pulled a blanket over both our legs, and leaned in. "They called me," she said softly. "Let me guess," I replied. "Damage control." She nodded. "Your mom said I was choosing sides, said I was tearing the family apart." "You are," I said, looking her in the eye, "the part that needed to fall apart." She rested her head on my shoulder. She also said something else, that she's going to set the record straight. I let out a long breath. Of course she island. The next morning, I found out exactly what that meant. She posted on Facebook another one of her dramatic monologues wrapped in concern. This time, it was all about how families go through difficult seasons, how private wounds sometimes spill into public view, and how some relatives are easily misled by distorted truths. It was denial dressed in Hallmark language, a performance crafted for sympathy from her curated crowd. No names, no details, just enough sugar to keep people believing she was the victim of some vague betrayal. I didn't reply. I didn't comment. I didn't have to, because by then, the truth had already taken on a life of its own. Aunt Laura made a post of her own. Nothing dramatic. Just one sentence, but it landed like a thunderclap. Sometimes the only way to heal a broken family is to stop pretending it's not broken. Proud of you, Jake. Then Josh, my cousin, shared a screenshot. It was an old text from my mom, where she trashed me right after I had helped him pay for his college textbooks. The caption beneath it was brutally honest. We all saw it. We just didn't want to admit it. And that was the spark. One by one, people started coming forward. Cousins, distant relatives, even one of Emily's old college roommates. They messaged me. Some apologized. Some said they'd always felt something was off, but didn't realize how deep it went. It was like someone had lifted the lid off a pressure cooker, and the steam had nowhere to go but out. Everyone had their own version of the story, their own wound, their own moment where the mask slipped, and now, for the first time, they weren't scared to speak up. A week after Christmas, a letter showed up in my mailbox, handwritten, from my mother. It wasn't an apology. It was a warning. She accused me of ruining the family's reputation, of making enemies I'd regret. She said there would be consequences for airing private matters in public. The tone was cold and desperate, like someone clutching onto the last scrap of control with both hands. I folded the letter once and dropped it in the trash without a second thought. There was no more battle to fight. The truth was speaking louder than I ever could. By New Year's Eve, the family was split down the middle. On one side, there were those who held on to the old ways like lifelines defending my mom, dismissing the audio as edited, calling the whole thing overblown drama. On the other side were the ones who finally opened their eyes, who saw things clearly, maybe for the first time. They started creating new traditions. Without the gatekeepers, Lily hosted a brunch in early January and invited the people she trusted. More than 20 showed up. No Uncle Ron, no Emily, no Mom, just the ones who chose truth over tradition. In a way, I've had to mourn something. Not just the illusion of a family I never really had, but the version of myself that kept waiting for their love to arrive, wrapped in praise or approval. I let that part of me go. Let him rest with the guilt, the people-pleasing, the constant hunger for validation that never came. And now, I'm living. I started writing again. For the first time since high school, I picked up a pen and let the words spill. I built a small freelance business from the ground up. Lily and I have become inseparable, more like siblings than cousins. And every now and then, a stranger will reach out. Someone who saw the thread, or heard about what happened, or found a piece of their own story in mine. They'll say something like, "Thank you, I've felt this way for years and didn't know I was allowed to say it out loud." So if you're reading this, if you're thinking about that relative who only calls when they need something, who jokes about your feelings like they're a punchline, who treats your love like it's a leash, I need you to hear me. You do not have to keep returning to a house just because your name is on the mailbox. You don't owe your silence to protect a peace that never protected you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand in front of the door they slammed shut, turn around, and never go back. I didn't lose a family. I outgrew one. And in the stillness that followed, in the quiet that used to scare me, I finally heard something I hadn't in years. My own voice, strong, steady, unapologetically mine.